I couldn't discard the envelope without a second glance. That juvenile scrawl, each letter contorted into harsh angles, immediately set me on edge. As my husband Derek squeezed my shoulder, I shrugged him off, unable to mask my disdain. "Why do you disrespect the efforts of my son?" "He's trying, Layla," Derek said, a pleading look in his eyes. I fought the urge to roll my eyes. Trying? That envelope contained malice disguised as affection, another phase in the unspoken war his teenage son waged against me. I forced a tight smile. "Of course, dear. I'll read it later." As Derek retreated, I let the envelope flutter into the trash, its pastel hues mocking my fragile union with this family. 6 months ago, I'd have given anything to call myself Mrs. Trenton, to share this handsome entrepreneur's life after years of putting career first. Yet the joy of becoming a wife withered under the cold scrutiny of Derek's son, Tyler. The boy's eyes missed nothing, always watchful when I moved through their home, my home now, though it never felt that way. Each brush of skin as I passed made my nerves prickle, imagining that teenage mind calculating new ways to disrupt the life I'd fought to build. Pathetic, Layla. He's just a child. I smoothed my hands over my skirt suit, the fabric exquisitely tailored from old Milan houses. If only I could reshape my doubts with such precision. Tossing the envelope should have felt trivial, yet Tyler's juvenile jabs chipped away at me, one gesture at a time. Over the grand fireplace, a portrait captured the Trentons in happier times. Derek beaming with paternal pride, his brown eyes crinkling at the corners, while Tyler grinned with unguarded delight. Vestiges of an illusion now tainted by undercurrents of resentment. My fingers brushed the damask wallpaper as I eyed the shadows pooling in each crevice. Like Tyler's malice, slinking through the sunlit rooms of this house, insidious yet unseen by his doting father. I'd become an expert in reading between the lines, in courtrooms and in life. The boy's behaviors went beyond teenage moodiness or adjustment issues. He wove a web tailored for my descent. But I wouldn't go easily. I'd battled worse monsters in case litigation and emerged victorious each time, arming myself with indisputable facts. However sinister this venomous envelope appeared, I refused to let a child threaten my hard-won life with Derek. Not when I'd sacrificed so much for this family, no matter how undeserving they seemed. The shrill ring of my phone shattered the quiet Saturday morning. I frowned at Derek's number flashing. He knew better than to disrupt my ritual of saluting the sunrise with a steaming mug on the balcony. "Layla," he said, his voice trembling. "You need to come home right away. It's Tyler. He's—" My stomach clenched as I sprang into the bedroom, hurling questions that went unanswered over his stammering apologies. 15 minutes later, I burst through the front door to find my stepson crumpled at the foot of the grand staircase, rasping for air. "Oh, God," I gasped, shoving past Derek to crouch beside the prone form. Up close, I recognized the unnatural arch of Tyler's back, the glassy eyes frozen wide. He wasn't unconscious at all. He flinched ever so slightly at my touch. This was staged. Rage crystallized inside me, bitter and immediate. I rose, crossing my arms as Tyler slipped back into his charade, moaning in exaggerated bursts. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded. Derek gaped at me like a landed fish. "He fell, Layla. We need to get him to the hospital." "Don't be an idiot. He's faking it." I gestured at the conspicuous lack of disarray, no scattered belongings or scuff marks on the wood to indicate an impact. Tyler had simply arranged himself in this absurd, dramatic pose. And suddenly, it clicked. The truth so obvious I couldn't believe I'd missed it before. "He's doing this because of me, isn't he?" My voice dropped to a lethal calm. "He wants you to believe I neglected him, that I'm an unfit stepmother." Derek's face contorted in righteous fury. "How dare you? He could have broken his neck." "Think, Derek, when have I ever been home alone with him to endanger him like this?" My hands curled into fists, frustration coursing through me. "He knows exactly what he's doing." A soft moan cut me off. Locking eyes with my stepson, I watched his face settle into an expression of angelic torment. An Oscar-worthy performance indeed. As the paramedics arrived in a swirl of flashing lights, Tyler's eyes stayed glued to mine, a silent challenge in that briefest lull before the theater resumed. And just like that, he had me questioning my own sanity, my perspective. Was this willfully twisted charade truly a cry for attention, born of some adolescent trauma? No matter how ill-conceived, the effort indicated a depth of need I couldn't understand. I'm so sorry this happened. Derek's pained whisper ghosted my ear as they loaded Tyler into the ambulance. We'll get you both some help. But help wouldn't be enough. Not now. With those 4 simple words, Derek had revealed where his unwavering loyalties remained, with the troubled boy he'd raised since infancy, the shared blood that bound them together. That night, I pored over my legal notes with unseeing eyes while Derek kept vigil by Tyler's hospital bed. All evidence to the contrary, the incident had cemented their unshakable alliance as father and son. While I, the interloper of mere 6 months, was now undeniably out in the cold. The hospital incident marked the beginning of an unspoken war that raged within the Trenton household. Subtle jibes became overt sabotage, each meticulously calculated by my cunning stepson. The Hendricks file is missing, I announced one evening, combing through the disarray on my home office desk. I could have sworn I left it right here. Derek lifted his eyes from the financial section, his brow furrowed. Have you asked Tyler? He's always poking around when I'm not home. A familiar coal of anger ignited in my gut. Of course, who else would have incentive to undermine my cases? I stormed towards Tyler's bedroom, flinging open the door without knocking. Looking for this? He dangled the file between 2 fingers, that ever-present smirk dancing on his lips. I snatched it away. You had no right. I was just having some fun. Tyler examined his nails. The picture of nonchalance. You worked too hard anyway. Thought I'd give you an excuse to relax. My jaw clenched as I battled the urge to throttle him. This isn't a game, you insolent little brat. Don't mess with my livelihood again. He gasped in mock offense. Brat? Is that any way to speak to your stepson? That saccharine tone dripped with disdain. A tempest flared behind his eyes, the kind that precedes destruction. I slammed the door behind me, Tyler's deranged laughter still ringing in my ears. Over the following weeks, the disruptions became impossible to dismiss as mere coincidence. My carefully prepared documents shuffled out of order, initials scribbled in odd places, even a scandalous photo edited into my closing presentation deck when I stepped away from my desk. The final insult came when I received an onslaught of dissatisfied client complaints, each alleging errors or oversights I knew to be false. How Tyler had accessed their confidential contact details was a mystery, one I intended to solve. Logging into the firm's database, I traced the account breaches back to an IP address within the Trenton residence. Every vulgar missive, every compromised case file stemmed from a computer registered under Tyler's name. Rage simmered inside me as irrefutable proof of his deception finally materialized. I printed out the pages, slamming them on the coffee table in front of Derek. Look at what your precious son has been up to, I growled. All along, he's been targeting my career in between his little stunts at home. Derek's eyes widened as he flipped through the documents, shaking his head in disbelief. There has to be an explanation. He's trying to ruin me, Derek. How many more smoking guns do you need? I dragged my hands through my hair, revulsion twisting my stomach. I'm living with a psychopath who gets off on destroying me piece by piece, and you're too blinded by your paternal instincts to see the truth. Tears glistened in Derek's eyes as he looked up at me beseechingly. I've failed him somehow. I have to make this right. A harsh laugh ripped from my throat. There's nothing left to fix. He's won. I won't let him decimate my name and reputation any longer. I turned towards the front door, my path suddenly clear. Layla, wait! Derek lurched to his feet. Where are you going? As far away from this nightmare as possible. I scooped up my overnight bag, the contents already packed in grim preparation. Don't follow me, Derek. I need space to decide whether this family is even worth salvaging. His shoulders sagged in defeat as I yanked open the door and let it slam behind me, fracturing another facade of domestic tranquility. Each click of my heels against the pavement marked the erasure of one more dead-end, foolish dream. That love could safeguard me. That this marriage could ever offer solace. Not when my own stepchild had become my most twisted adversary. I should have known better than to attend the firm's annual gala while embroiled in my personal war with Tyler. But backing down meant surrendering the career I dedicated my life to building. I refused to be driven out by a petulant child's tantrums. The grand ballroom gleamed with chandeliers and tuxedoed waiters gliding between clusters of lawyers making stiff conversation. I ignored the curious looks thrown my way. News of strife within the Trenton household had undoubtedly trickled through the grapevine. Squaring my shoulders, I wove through the crowd, plastering on a confident smile whenever I spotted a prospective client. Well, if it isn't the lady of the hour. I inwardly cringed at the nasal voice, turning to face the firm's most ruthless partner. Jerry, a pleasure, as always. He leered at me, eyes roving in a way that made my skin crawl. You've caused quite the stir lately, Layla. I must say the rumors are intriguing. Before I could respond, a familiar figure barged through the double doors, eyes wild and furious. You evil witch, Tyler. My heart plummeted as he shoved past bewildered guests, shoving a crumpled document into my hands. Is this how you treat family? By threatening and abusing us for your own twisted games? I scanned the document, a knot forming in my throat. It appeared to be a damning email from my account, warning Tyler of increasingly hostile behavior towards him and Derek if he didn't cease his meddling. The words were mine, but the vicious tone felt unnatural, divorced from anything I'd ever say. All at once, the endgame became clear. I looked up at Tyler, keeping my expression impassive. Where did you get this? You sent it to me, you deranged liar. He gestured wildly at the assembled crowd. After everything my father and I have done to make you feel welcome, this is how you repay us? With intimidation and cruelty? Layla? Derek appeared at my side, his brow furrowed in confusion. What's going on here? I opened my mouth, but no words emerged. How could I defend myself against such calculated falsities, provable evidence left in plain sight, no doubt for Derek to stumble across during Tyler's grand ruse? Checkmate. The boy had undone me with a few deft strokes, leaving my reputation in shreds before an audience of professional peers. Tyler seized on my silence, those demonic eyes sparking with triumph. That's what I thought. No more lies, no more manipulations. Derek flinched as if struck, his betrayed gaze piercing straight through me. This isn't the woman I married. Those 6 words ricocheted through my skull, cleaving far deeper than any wound. Humiliation and defeat washed over me in icy waves, rendering me mute and helpless. How could I untangle this web of deceit when its architect had woven my own noose so perfectly? So I did the only thing I could. I fled, the ballroom's tinkling laughter swallowing me up from behind. No one stopped me. No one protested as I burst through the double doors into the unforgiving night, the pathway to my shattered life. The city lights blurred as I stumbled towards my car, tears streaming freely for the first time since this all began. Everything, my credibility, my standing in the legal community, my marriage, all of it destroyed in one masterstroke of cunning and chaos. I didn't know how long I sat there, cold and alone, before the first steely tendril of resolve took root. Enough cowering, it was time I repaid Tyler's deranged debts in full, no matter what the cost. The bitter sting of defeat ebbed as a new resolve took hold. I would no longer play the victim. After weeks of meek capitulation, something feral had awoken inside me, a primal drive to regain control at any cost. First, though, I needed proof of Tyler's machinations beyond what my gut insisted. Indisputable evidence to counter whatever falsified paper trail he'd carefully constructed. My anger burned hot, but cooler heads would prevail in dismantling this twisted game. Camille eyed me cautiously as she ushered me inside her apartment. My oldest friend had been blindsided by the sordid gala tale, the first inkling of turmoil simmering beneath the Trenton's pristine facade. Start from the beginning, she urged, pouring 2 generous glasses of Merlot, and don't leave anything out. I recounted the vendetta Tyler had waged since my wedding day, the subtle acts of sabotage, the manipulation of Derek's affections, all culminating in that career-crushing ambush. Camille's brow furrowed deeper with each salacious detail. That sick little bastard, she finally muttered, shaking her head. But why? What's his endgame? He wants me gone, humiliated. The words emerged tinged with a weariness that spoke of battles lost. And he's well on his way to succeeding. Derek won't even look at me after that stunt. Camille squeezed my hand, her eyes blazing with a familiar protective fire. Then we fight back harder. No nephew of mine gets to torment my family without paying the price. I managed a grateful smile, recalling the circumstances that had forged our bond beyond simple friendship. If anyone understood the leveling power of cold hard facts, it was Camille, a former hacker whose skills I'd legally leveraged countless times. "That's why I need your help digging up the proof I'm lacking," I said quietly. "Any deleted files, browser histories, anything that exposes how deep this vendetta really goes." She grinned, downing the last of her wine with a single decisive gulp. "Consider it done." Over the next several days, Camille became a fixture in the Trenton household, her laptop a constant accoutrement as she burrowed through the digital detritus. I pored over the reams of data she excavated, hunting for any thread that could substantiate my instincts. "This is big." Camille's voice made me jolt from yet another night spent combing through gigabytes of obscured intel. "Check this out." She pulled up security footage I hadn't seen, grainy images of Tyler rifling through drawers in my office, clearly doctoring documents before shoving them back in disarray. Other clips showed him inexplicably alone in the house, falling down the stairs or lurching dramatically against countertops in phony seizure-like throes. "He was staging everything," I murmured, sickened realization sinking in. "That twisted little psycho has been manufacturing this entire litany of abuses to alienate me from Derek." Camille's jaw tightened as she unearthed another buried file, this one containing email exchanges with a rival law firm specializing in character defamation cases. And apparently, he had an ally willing to complete his takedown. White-hot fury blazed through me as the final pieces slammed into place. All this time, I'd perceived Tyler's sadistic games as the jealous flailings of an attention-starved stepchild. But his depravity ran far deeper. This was a calculated, multidimensional assault, reinforced with collaborators intent on destroying everything I'd built, down to my very identity. He was unraveling my life strand by carefully woven strand, secure in the knowledge that his manipulations had blinded Derek to his true, monstrous nature, and I very nearly let the snake consume me whole. Derek deserves to see this. I heard the raw menace lacing my voice like bared fangs. He needs to recognize just how far his son has fallen. Camille stared at me hard, voicing the question we both knew hovered unspoken. And if he still can't accept the truth? I lifted my chin, unafraid as clarity crystallized around that coiled core of feminine resilience Tyler could never breach. Then I'll have no choice but to burn this family to the ground. The weight of Camille's evidence sat like a lead anchor in the pit of my stomach as I strode into the Trenton home that evening. No more evasions, no more platitudes. Tonight, Tyler's maelstrom of manipulation would finally be laid bare. I found them in the formal dining room, Derek nursing a tumbler of scotch while Tyler picked listlessly at his dinner plate. An uncomfortable silence smothered the cavernous space, broken only when Derek registered my presence with a curt nod. "We need to talk." I kept my voice clipped, revealing none of the roiling tempest brewing inside. "All of us." Tyler rolled his eyes dramatically, but said nothing as I claimed the seat across from him. Derek gulped his drink, the furrow between his brows deepening. "If this is about the other night, this is about the truth finally coming to light." I didn't break eye contact as I slid the laptop towards them, the damning security clips already cued. There was a sharp intake of breath as the first one played, Tyler skulking into my office, rifling through drawers with calculated determination. His smug face materialized in stark detail as he scattered papers in an approximation of struggle. Derek shook his head slowly while Tyler remained inscrutable, his jaw clenched tight. "Keep watching," I said through gritted teeth. The next clip revealed him flinging himself backwards in a parody of a fall, thrashing around before freezing in that same twisted position I'd initially dismissed as real injury. He repeated the move several times, each one more exaggerated and revolting than the last. But the final clip was what made Derek's complexion blanch. Tyler openly conversing with a man I recognized as a senior partner from Albrecht & Klein, my firm's most ruthless rival. I watched their silent exchange with dawning horror, Tyler's eyes alight with smug satisfaction. That vile, treacherous worm had been colluding with the enemy all along. This can't be real." Derek's voice was little more than a croak, his hands visibly trembling as he reached for the closed laptop. "My son, he would never do anything like this. He's just a boy." A bark of mirthless laughter escaped me as I stood abruptly, unable to contain the scorn radiating off me in waves. "Wake up and join the rest of us in reality, Derek." I stabbed an accusatory finger at the frozen image of Tyler's impassive face. That is not a boy. It's a master manipulator without a shred of conscience or decency. He orchestrated this entire smear campaign against me, all because some deranged part of him couldn't handle me joining this family. With each sentence, Tyler's perpetual mask of detachment began to splinter until he finally surged to his feet, unleashing a scream of pure animalistic rage. You think you know me? You're the disease destroying everything good in this house. Flecks of spittle flew from his contorted snarl as bony fingers clenched into fists. My dad was better off without some career-obsessed shrew making him choose between his only family and her ambitions. I laughed derisively, shaking my head at his pathetically transparent tantrum. There it is, the truth at last. You've been threatened by my presence since day one, terrified I'd pry your daddy's devotion away from his precious heir. Derek surged upright, his expression aghast, as our volleys ricocheted through the tense air between us. Both of you, that's enough. When neither of us acknowledged him, his voice hardened to a steely command. I said, enough. The gruff bellow seemed to pierce through Tyler's fog of madness. He collapsed back into his chair, chest heaving like a deranged beast. Derek placed a trembling hand on his son's shoulder before turning to fix me with a defeated look that cleaved me to the core. He needs help, Layla. Serious help that I've been too afraid to demand until now. His rueful gaze bored into me, begging for understanding. This is my failure as a parent, not yours. I'm so sorry. The naked remorse in his eyes drained the vindication from my own outburst, leaving room for only a hollow, leaden sadness. I'd wanted to shatter their delusions so completely, to force them into the harsh light of day that had burned me for months now. But as I absorbed the tableau of a father cradling his shattered son in the wake of my brutal attack, I wondered if this family was already too fractured to salvage. The aftermath of that explosive dinner lingered like a miasma within the Trenton home. Derek and I could barely look at each other, let alone exchange words heavier than terse pleasantries. For his part, Tyler had withdrawn completely, spending most of his time sequestered in the bedroom that had served as mission control for his twisted machinations. I wasn't naive enough to believe the sullen silences represented remorse on his part. More likely, he was simply regrouping, plotting the next offensive in his war against me and the family unit I'd dared to infiltrate. The thought of having to maintain constant vigilance against his depravity left me soul-weary. So when Derek broached the idea of professional intervention, I seized on it like a lifeline. I've researched some programs that specialize in behavioral realignment for troubled youths, he explained one evening over the hollow clatter of dinner dishes. Out-of-state boarding schools with intensive therapy and isolated environments. A fresh start away from whatever toxic influences enabled this path. My eyes flicked towards the empty chair where Tyler should have been seated, pushing congealed peas around his plate with that same disaffected NY. You want to send him away. The thought should have elated me, but instead an inexplicable tendril of sadness unfurled. After everything, he's still your son. That can't be easy. Derek's shoulders slumped as he lifted his gaze to mine, raw anguish etched into the creases around his eyes. He's my greatest failure, Layla. This warped resentment he's cultivated, it's a sickness I've willfully ignored for too long, all because I deluded myself into believing I was protecting him. He drew a shuddering breath, his voice softening to a barely audible rasp. But who was I really protecting? Not my wife, clearly. Maybe some part of me has been clinging to the little boy he used to be before his mother passed. The child who needed me as his safe harbor, not the willfully destructive force he's become. My heart constricted at the naked vulnerability in his confession. For all of Tyler's vicious depravity, his actions had indeed opened up a ragged emotional wound in Derek, one I hadn't fully glimpsed until now. If this program is what he needs, I support your decision. The words tasted like sawdust, but I knew them to be true. As much as I longed to excise Tyler from our lives completely, the choice wasn't mine alone to make. Derek managed a grimace that didn't reach his eyes. I hope you can find it within yourself to offer me the same patience and support you've been so sorely lacking from me these past months. His stark candor lanced straight through any indignation I felt. replacing it with a weary understanding. We'd both made debilitating mistakes, misjudged circumstance after circumstance, until the powder keg detonated in our faces. But liberation also came at an unlikely cost. The loss of whatever perverted, dysfunctional family dynamics still tethered the three of us together. Tyler's departure would either represent a point of no return or the first trembling step towards reconstructing the genuine bonds we'd all sacrificed to his madness. "This isn't the end, Derek." I rested my hand over his, absorbing the slight tremble that still coursed through his wearied frame. Just the promise of a new beginning, should we both have the courage to seize it. His fingers tightened around mine, gratitude flickering beneath the sorrow shrouding those soulful eyes. A fragile spark of hope had been rallied from the embers of our marital conflagration. But within its fledgling gleam, only one certainty awaited. The path forward would be lonely until I could make peace with the phantoms of deceptions past. The Trenton household felt cavernous in the wake of Tyler's departure. An uneasy truce had settled between Derek and me, both of us realizing the fragility of this new beginning we'd stumbled into. Words remained scarce, our interactions delicate and fraught with unvoiced anxieties about the future. I spent most evenings alone, curled up with a worn legal pad where I began chronicling the turmoil of the past year. The wretched unraveling of my marriage, the torment inflicted by my diabolical stepson, the searing self-doubt that had threatened to consume me, it all emerged in a purging stream of ugly, unvarnished truth. Page after page unfurled in a sordid tapestry of dysfunction, secret machinations, and the perils of blindly trusting even those closest to us. With each damning revelation inked onto the paper, a curious lightness took root inside me, as if expunging these poisoned events from my psyche could finally clear the path towards peace. One sleepless night, Derek found me hunched over the growing manuscript, dark circles ringing my eyes. "You're writing a book," he murmured, more statement than question. I looked up, offering a rueful smile. "An exorcism of sorts, getting all the ugliness out so I can start overwriting happier chapters." He settled onto the couch beside me, that pensive furrow etched into his brow. "About us? About what my son? About the insidious cancers that can metastasize even in the most loving families when we're not vigilant." I traced the spirals of my cramped scrawl, unable to meet his probing gaze. The lies, the denial, the sabotage, all elements that nearly destroyed me. Derek exhaled a heavy sigh, leaning back against the cushions. "You could have walked away, you know. When things went nuclear with Tyler, you'd have been justified abandoning this nightmare completely." "But I couldn't abandon you." The words slipped out with surprising tenderness. "Whatever sick depravity consumed your son, you were collateral, not combatant. Leaving you to suffer the consequences alone would have been the real, unforgivable offense." A pregnant pause stretched between us as Derek absorbed my confession. When he finally spoke, his voice was little more than a gravelly rasp. "I failed you both in so many ways, Layla. Allowed my own damaged perceptions to warp everything until I couldn't recognize truth from manipulation." His fingers found mine, squeezing with resolute intensity. "But your perseverance showed me a path forward that doesn't lead to utter desolation." Tears blurred my vision as I squeezed back, drawing strength from his rasping vow. Whatever unraveled before us, however daunting the prospect of sewing our tattered lives back together, I knew we'd face it as partners, united by tempering fires no amount of treachery could extinguish. The ensuing months saw me pouring that hard-fought resilience into my manuscript, until it swelled into a true, brutally poignant exploration of family dysfunction. My caustic personal account morphed into a resonant guidebook for others experiencing similar personal upheavals and toxic dynamics. And when the first bound proofs of veiled intentions arrived, emblazoned with glowing endorsements from domestic abuse counselors and family psychologists alike, the dam of anguish finally fractured. Because as I ran my fingers over the embossed cover, I recognized my story had transcended mere catharsis. It had reforged me into a purveyor of empowerment, a voice sharpened by adversity into an agent of profound change. The standing ovation that greeted my keynote speech at that year's National Family Summit was merely icing on a greater reward. Watching the hushed reverence in Derek's eyes as he clutched his own copy, the the phantom of our past inability to communicate exercised by the sheer magnitude of my resilience. Though we may never recover what was lost to that crucible of pure malice and deception, we'd emerge together on the other side, embracing a new status quo designed to uplift others where we had faltered so perilously. And for the first time since my ill-fated union with the Trentons, I truly felt at peace within my hard-won role, as the fierce guardian against the demons Tyler had so misguidedly unleashed.